Okay, hello and welcome to another sped up, less painful version of my live stream video from yesterday featuring this Cloud with Lightning large stamp. Okay, some people had requested a scene using lightning from the previous live stream the night before. I don't remember what brought that up. I don't know, maybe we were discussing something like sky figures or something like that. And someone mentioned, oh, that would be kind of cool for this mirror card format, and I thought it was too. And I usually like to do my Cloud with Lightning in a dramatic setting using some sort of body of water below so that I can stamp it usually upside down on one piece of cardstock. But I thought, well, since the mirror card is, utilizing this reflective, reflection convention, why don't we try it here? Okay, now I usually like to do a lot of contrasts in my top card pieces of the mirror card format, so I wasn't quite sure if it would work or not. In fact, I was thinking, I don't think it will, but might as well try it. So let's try to come up with some different solutions here. Okay, now I've already formatted a pre-folded black piece of cardstock with a quarter-page piece of the silver foil taped down or glued down to the lower half of the card, and I'm stamping the Lakeside Cove, the bottom portion of it, onto that silver foil. I don't need to mask off the top because it's going to be covered up with the top part of the scene anyway. I stamped it in Brilliance ink. You can do it with like a StazOn too. That would be perfect for the foil as well. I do need to test out the StazOn to see if it would be as dark as the thicker style of black pigment ink of the Brilliance, but I don't know. I need to get around to trying that. Okay, so we have the Cloud with Lightning here, and I was trying to figure out in my mind what color I should stamp it in, because here's my dilemma here. If I stamp that Cloud with Lightning in something like a black ink or a very dark one, and stamp it in the sky, when I stamp my tree, tops of the trees of the Lakeside Cove, over the top of it, also in black, there's not going to be any contrast between the Cloud with Lightning stamp and those trees, so the tree silhouette won't really show up very much. So I thought, well, why don't we go kind of in the middle? Let's go with a medium tone blue, for the most part, on the Cloud with Lightning, okay? Now, I inked it up with a darker blue, but I'm going in with this lighter blue pen, and I'm adding in a lot of this lighter blue in the hopes that it'll stamp out kind of like a watercolory type of effect, with those blended tones inherent in the impression, okay? So in other words, I'm not just stamping out mono value, okay? Hopefully I'm going to get some light blues and dark blues in that impression there, okay? All right, now see, that's still pretty dark down below, but my Lakeside Cove stamp has trees kind of, a little bit, they're taller on the left and right hand side of the cove. All right, now that's the same thing goes for this cloud. I couldn't really think of, at least definitively, what color I should stamp it in, so I just went with a kind of a medium tone blue. Maybe it's a little bit lighter than medium, but that's the way it will look. But I still wasn't sure because I often, or not often, I always add an additional tone after I stamp out this lightning. Okay, so here's the other thing. I want that lightning to stand out nice and light, all right? But I don't want to darken all those clouds, again, for the same reason. I want the silhouette of my trees to stand out, so it was trying to, kind of doing a little bit of a compromise, I think, a visual compromise. Going with kind of a little bit more of a medium tone overall on my coloring here, okay? All right, now here's the thing. When you color in something like this, I want that lightning to stand out, so I need to bring in some color and make it darker around it, right? If you make the areas darker around that lightning bolt, or those bolts right in the middle, it will make them seem lighter by contrast again, okay? But I don't want to make it so dark down below again, because I'm going to have that those trees in there. So here's what I'm doing on this card, which I never do when I'm just working on one piece of paper for my entire scene. Okay, this one, I'm utilizing the silver foil for the reflection. So what I'm going to do is down below, I've left all those clouds uncolored. Now I stamped them out in color, but I'm not adding, at least I'm not adding too much additional color on them. Okay, so they're nice and light, and they're just as dark as, in this case, the Caribbean blue that they were stamped out in. Okay, but I will go darker up top, and that's where I'm kind of adding those. It's a little bit of a vignette of blue tones like that. And again, I want those clouds around the lightning to be to appear as though they are reflecting the light being cast by the lightning. Okay. In reality, they wouldn't be that light. I mean, those clouds are lighter than the lightning. But again, it's because I want to create some contrast for that mirrored section. So it's not as complicated as it sounds. You just kind of go, you have a lot more contrast on the lower half of these mirror cards than up top. Up top you can go with whatever you want, but have a decent amount of contrast down below. I mean, you don't have to, but it reads easier in that mirrored area, okay? And again, we're not using like a mirror, we're using a piece of silver. So see that right down there? You can see that area on the horizon. It's glowing, nice and bright. And again, I don't even have the tops of the trees in here yet. And I saved that for kind of a latter process. And that's because if I stamped at those, that lakeside cove, the tops of the trees, before I did all this, I would just have to wait a little bit of, before it dried, before I could color in. Okay, so I just figured, why not just color the background first, stamp out those trees afterwards, and I won't even have to worry about that drying. Okay. All right, now here I'm kind of talking with my viewers in the live stream, but let's go in with the white pigment ink. Okay, now if you compare that right side where I've applied that white pigment ink, look how much more soft and kind of billowy those clouds look with some additional white pigment ink applied with one of the softer things you can ever use to apply pigment ink, which is a cotton ball. Okay, if I want a really soft look for something, it stands to reason that you would use a very soft applicator for that type of look, right? So adding it down like that, this cotton ball in white ink, it came out a lot better than what I thought it would. I didn't think I'd be able to see it too much because I didn't color it in down below. But it did work. I don't know, it made it look even more billowy and, I don't know, kind of, that soft illumination in there. So, I don't know, that white pigment ink, it was just, this one surprised me here. It just looks so much more soft and billowy, and, those clouds are supposed to look like that. Okay, now, to my viewers that were watching this live stream, I was showing them this Rubberstamp Madness ad from 1998. Gosh, that's going back a ways. And that's the first time I ever used white pigment ink in a scene. It was for these waterfalls. And I remember doing that, thinking, oh my god, that looks so good. It gave it that real soft, kind of whimsical, magical look. And I've always kept that original there. I don't know, it was like a little, it was a textural breakout moment. I guess a lighting breakout moment too. I didn't used to use very much pigment inks, and I didn't use them very much for anything else other than that type of lighting in my scene. Okay, now see this. On the main bolt here, the largest one, I'm applying that same type of application of pigment ink on that center bolt. Now look how that bolt really stands out now. Not super bold or anything like that, but from a textural standpoint, it really just, it looks so illuminated like that. And again, it kind of separates it from the other bolts within that image, so it gives it a little bit more depth. All right, so this is where I'm showing people where I'm going to stamp the Lakeside Cove, okay? And I want it to merge with the lower half that I stamped, right from the beginning on the foil. Now, what I was explaining to people is that you don't have to measure this out to get it perfectly, to match up that impression or those impressions on the foil. Just as long as you're, reasonably close, it will merge just fine from a visual standpoint. I've designed the stamps to be used like that. Now, see that? There you have the cove, the top portion. That's what it looks like wide open, but in the reflected area, look how much that, that merges really nicely like that. Okay, so this card is almost done. Now, I have this sped up 4 times, okay, but I would think that I could walk people through, if we were doing this scene here, I don't know, in probably 45 minutes or so. The thing that would take a little bit of time is just adding in those layers of blue, if someone hasn't done that process before, okay? But this lower half of the scene really doesn't take up very much time at all. It's just a few impressions. There was the impressions of the bottom part of the Lakeside Cove. Now I'm going with, actually the stamp is in, there's 3 stamps in here from Nature Set number 8, but this is the Pines and Rocks, and I'm giving it this kind of foreground, kind of flanking of the center area, okay? So what we're going to try to achieve with these impressions in the lower portions, I usually go lower left and right corners, is I'm going for some additional foreground depth in here. And when you do this too, if there's something in that sky area that's going to be reflected in that foil, having that, these dark trees to the left and right hand side will make that reflection of that light source, the lightning in this case, look lighter in theory, okay? So I'm looking for my little rock stamp here. And checking out, look at that foreground down there. See those trees to the left and right of the lightning reflection and how that really works, pretty effectively. But isn't that a fun look there? Doesn't it look real 3-dimensional like that? Okay, now I'm going to add these rocks down here, and I'll do it in kind of multiple impressions. I'll do some that are darker and some that are lighter. Some people worry about, oh my god, I would get fingerprints on it. Yeah, I get fingerprints too, but you just wipe them off. I get smudgy fingerprints all over in that center area. But, what does that take? It takes like 5 seconds to wipe it off. Or if you get your finger in some of that wet ink in the foil, then don't use Brilliance. Use StazOn and it'll dry in 5 seconds. But I wouldn't keep something like that from doing it. It's just like, oh, I don't want to work on a card because, my fingers are going to get inky. Now, I mean, some people wear gloves, but, most of us kind of embrace the inky finger type of scenario because it's just really hard to avoid it. But, it's just like, okay, my card got a little inky. That is an important factor if you're putting fingerprints onto a cardstock because you can't erase it on foil. If you get a fingerprint, you just wipe it right off. Or if it wipes off your impression, then you just stamp it again. It's like the most forgiving paper, surface you'll ever use because, you can remedy anything after the fact. So it's not like, oh my god, I did that. There's a point of no return. No, it's not like cardstock. You just do it again. And again, I get little smudgy fingerprints all over my foil. I'm kind of, I'm a little bit more mindful of it these days, but if I don't do it for even like a couple weeks, it's like sometimes I forget some of those little aspects of working with these types of non-porous surfaces. Okay, so here's what I'm doing here. I'm getting some additional depth in my sky. Remember how I stamped out the clouds to the, surrounding my cloud with lightning? Well, I can't see those clouds on the perimeter anymore because it got too dark. So I'm just reintroducing these clouds, but in a darker color, okay? So it's not like a mistake. It's all kind of part of the process. You can just go back in and add additional cloud impressions, okay? So in my style of stamping, I don't have these moments of no return. It just never happens. You can just re-stamp something. In foils, you can erase. I can erase everything that I did on that foil, before I heat set it and spray seal it. But like I said, if you're worried about that, then you just go with the, like a StazOn. All right, so there's a lot more depth in that sky, doing that perimeter of black cloud impressions, okay? I think it looks good as is, but just to kind of put on some final touches, finishing touches, with some kind of sharp, detailed applications of white. So we went with a very soft application of white with a white pigment ink on a cotton ball. Now I'm going in here and adding some very detailed little highlights with a white acrylic paint pen, and this is really fun to do. If you've never done this before, I'd always recommend you doing this with whatever type of imagery you're doing. It's not just for scenes, but it's called specular light, and it's light that's brighter than white. And just about every object around you, provided there's some sort of light source around you, is going to be reflecting some of that light in its forms, okay? Now, naturally, the more reflective the object, the more light it'll reflect, but pencils, pens, your wallet, your keyboard, your mouse, there's all little areas of specular light. It could be light coming from your monitor, a light in your room, or just through a window, but everything has kind of got this little aspect of this type of thing. Okay, so these little reflective areas like that, and it makes things look more dimensional. Okay, so sometimes it's too much, like, oh my god, that white just stands out too much. So I'm going in with my blue pen here and getting a duller version of it. And here I'm just mentioning, okay, you add some of this in, and oh my god, I went overboard. I added too much white, or too many pen dots. Then what you do is you just go back over it with your whatever sponging technique you did, with a darker color. It doesn't have to be black. In this case, it might be a blue. And you just go back over some of those dots with some color and tint your dots a darker color. So always different things you can do. All right, now I'm putting some little bit of highlights on the tops of these rocks, and I'm just showing my viewers that there are lighter areas on the tops of the rocks in the design. So all you have to do is look at your impression and see where the lighter areas are on the impression, and you just reiterate it with additional highlights. Okay, so you shade the darker portions of your imagery and you illuminate the lighter portions. Okay, see those little highlights on the tops of those rocks. You see a little bit of it in the clouds right there, but it just gives you a little bit of extra texture. Okay, now I'm going in here and I'm adding some little highlights on the tops of the rocks down in the foil section. Now this is one where the white did stand out a little bit too much. I added too much in there, okay? So see that? Now look at this. You can't really see the highlights too much, but at certain angles, you can see those dots in there, the highlights on the top side of the rock. I thought it was a little bit too much, so here we go. I'm just taking a little bit of black pigment ink. I'm not coming in with a real thick version. I'm coming in with like a very dry version of it, like a 5% gray, because my black is on my cotton ball is so dry. But it's just kind of mellowing out some of those white dots. So see, they're a little bit more mellow. They're not quite as visible, but you do get some of that highlighting on them. All right, so that is that scene. Here's my thing. I always like doing quote stamps on the surface of my so-called water, but I didn't want to block off any of that lightning, because the lightning, and maybe more specifically, the lightning reflection is kind of the star of this scene, so I didn't want to cover that up at all with a quote stamp, and I didn't leave too much room up in the sky for a quote. I guess like a one-word stamp could be used like in the upper left or right corner, stamped in white over the, that darker area would be kind of cool. But I don't know. Maybe I'll do that at some point in time, but I couldn't think of a quote that I'd want to add in here. I don't have like a quote, like a lightning quote or something like that. I do have quotes based on things like light and, I don't know, sky types of things. But I don't know, nothing came to mind on this one, so I'm just leaving it as is. All right, but look at that. See that soft lightning bolt in the middle? It looks like it's illuminating kind of the moisture, I guess, in the atmosphere, whatever, the clouds around it, like that. But I don't know, I think this piece was really effective in terms of that mirror aspect, okay? I was really surprised at that. And also, this is one of the first times when I didn't do this thing I call blocking out. Laying down some white pigment ink and then stamping the objects in that lower portion in black over the top of that white. But what I found on this piece right here is that, if I don't have color in those objects down below that kind of mimic what's going on up top, the top reflects into those images anyways. So, you'll get some of that blue from the sky in the images down below because it's just reflecting that. So anyways, this piece, I don't know, I'm always learning something different when I'm doing these foil pieces because, I don't know, I think altogether, I don't know if I've even done 15 of these so far. I just came up with this format. I don't know if it's even been a year. Maybe it was a year ago. I don't think it's been that long, but I don't know, there's still things I'm learning about it, because it's kind of still in its initial stages. But I've tried different types of materials on the top portion of it, photo prints, glow-in-the-dark paper, different colors of foil and whatnot. But they all have their own kind of character, and they're all really fun to use in this format. And I think you get some really nice three-dimensional types of looks in a very simple way with just that silver card stock down below. Okay, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this version of this scene.